What's going on, Guardians? My name is the Black Link, and we're coming hot off of a weekend full of The Division 2. Got a chance to play through that beta, started up on Friday, ended yesterday, and I could not be any sadder to see it go. I know we've definitely been quiet on the video front here on the channel, and the reason is because I have been playing nothing but the Division 2 beta for 3 days straight. And what a wild ride it has been. I've got no fluffy words or speech prepared for this. I loved this beta. It has, in my opinion, given a fantastic look at what we can expect from Massive when the full game comes out. And it feels like such a great improvement upon the first game that I hardly even know where to begin. Although maybe I should say, rather than improvement, extension upon the first game. There have been a lot of jokes out there about Division 2's beta being kind of like Division 1.5 rather than 2. And while I definitely see where those people are coming from, I would say that the Division 2 really improves upon enough things that it really stands on its own, separate from the first game. Although, watching the footage from Division 2 and Division 1, I could absolutely understand for people to sit back and think, oh, well, this is just going to be more of the same. First things first, they kind of expanded upon the fantastic in-game state that we had back in the Division 1. They've taken a lot of things they learned from that first game and incorporated it into the second game here. A lot of things like weapons and skills and the mod system have really been improved upon, or in some cases, regressed upon. I think the way you have to manually target a lot of your turrets now is a little frustrating. But virtually everything about the skills and mod system has seen a change with Division 2, leaving it feeling similar to the first game, but with enough differences that it kind of stands on its own. Engine and movement system wise, it's virtually identical to the first game though. You still move around in what I consider to be some of the best third-person shooting action you'll ever find in any video game. But of course, along with that comes a lot of the Ubisoft-Jank that plagued the first Division, including a lot of the glitches that you ran into in that game as well. While the movement system is mostly smooth and fluid, you will get caught up on little hitches when you're trying to jump down off platforms, or when you're trying to move from cover to cover. Sometimes it'll just take you to the wrong spot. A lot of those same kind of frustrating movement issues that were available in the first game do pop up from time to time here as glitchy little things in Division 2. The same thing can be said for some of the enemies and NPCs you'll be encountering. There's a couple of T-poses that you'll run into, or people dying in funny positions while they're floating in the air or mid-animation. Granted, those are smaller things that don't really affect gameplay too much. It is important to note that a lot of that weird sort of Ubisoft-Jank is apparent in this game as well. And of course, not to mention some of the server issues that have been going on. A lot of people were getting the Delta 3 kick, myself included. That was definitely a sore point of frustration for me when I first started playing and just kept getting kicked from different missions. It wasn't as bad as things were in the Anthem demo a week or so ago, but it was still really frustrating. They put out some server maintenance that kind of fixed some of those issues, but the Delta 3s were still going on a little bit even after that for people. But for the most part, when you could get in and actually play this game, it plays pretty well. If you were a fan of the first Division, or if you're a fan of third-person shooting, tactical shooting like this, you're probably going to enjoy your time moving around and lacing shots on enemies in this game. The change in locale has been really interesting. We move from the snowy alleyways of New York City to Washington, D.C., our nation's capital in this game. And in addition to changing cities, we're also changing weather patterns here. This is now in the summer, and this is reflected in a lot of the light, bright shots you get of the city. The first Division game was gorgeous, like it's an absolutely gorgeous game, and this one's living up to that moniker. It's definitely a spectacle to look at, and the bright colors, lighting, and silhouettes will definitely catch your eye, especially if you're playing on PC like I am. But really, I've just been having a ton of fun with this thing. Thankfully, like I said, not too much has changed from the first game, so the third-person shooting mechanics are virtually identical to what they were in Division 1. Although I will say that the changes they've made to some of the different weapon classes are appreciated. If you played Division 1, you'll remember that very often we had some top-tier weapons, and then everything else that wasn't in that weapon class was garbage. When the game first came out, it was like the Vector. Everybody wanted to get the Vector, and nothing else could compete with it. Thankfully, in this game, a lot of the weapons feel different, they play differently, and they all each kind of have their own unique style and situations where they really shine. Now, one of the biggest complaints about the first game, of course, was from people who were sick of the bullet sponges. And believe me, I understand, I really understand. Unfortunately, that's not too different in Division 2. Remember, this is an RPG looter shooter, so bullet sponges are the name of the game. You could look at games like Diablo, you could look at Destiny. Bullet sponges are everywhere in that. But of course, the dichotomy there is the fact that in Destiny, you're shooting a gigantic armored knight or some kind of crazy fallen tank, which, makes sense to put a lot of shots into that. When it's some dude in a hoodie, maybe unloading 2 full clips from an LMG doesn't really make too much sense. It's kind of immersion breaking for a lot of people, and that was a huge complaint in the first game. Thankfully, that has been tacked down a little bit. There's less bullet spongy enemies in Division 2. At least amongst the more common enemies you'll be facing out on the streets and in missions and whatnot. But the bosses themselves are still going to be pretty bullet spongy, although they have kind of their own little different aesthetics now to show you that they're going to be bullet spongy. A lot of the enemies, the yellow bars and hyper shielded enemies that you'll be fighting, come out in full body armor, and they've actually got some pretty interesting mechanics this time around. You can knock some of those elements of the body armor off to deal more damage to that part, like there's these big heavy dudes who are completely padded over, but you can knock their helmet off, and if you do, they take full damage to the head like any red bar enemy would. I think that's a pretty interesting way to kind of bridge the gap there for people who hated the bullet spongy feel of enemies in the first game, although of course that's never gonna fully go away for a game like this. Like I said, it's an RPG and it's a looter shooter. Bullet spongy enemies are just the name of the game when it comes to enemy factions with that. But for the most part, I think it feels pretty good. In the demo, we got a few story missions. We had a bunch of side missions that were all over on the map. I loved the side missions in this. They felt way more in-depth than they did in the first game, where it was basically, go here, murk this person, bang, bang, boom, you're done, or pick this up. In this, there's bits of story that are added in there. There's a lot of environmental storytelling, just like in the first game. But for the most part, this beta kept me busy, whereas I have to compare it to the previous beta I played, the Anthem demo a week or two ago, where that was just so sparse and so empty and devoid of content. I really found stuff to do every single day that I played Division 2. There's control points where you can go and reclaim areas from the gangs that have taken it over. There are supply drops. You can head out into the world and stop public executions that are happening. It's definitely a game that promises to give you plenty of things to do while you're playing it. I do believe the devs stated that the main story, and it's going to take about 40 hours to complete. And beyond that, if it's anything like the first game, there's going to be absolutely tons of things to do once you get to in-game, and plenty of little side missions across the map for you to go and complete. Which is right up my alley. One of my favorite things to do in Division 1 was just to go out in the world, complete things, finish challenges, and get weapons. See if I could make different builds, like sniper builds and shotgun and LMG builds and all the kind of stuff like that. And speaking of those builds, we've seen kind of a little bit of a change with the way some of the armor system works in Division 2. They've sort of streamlined the gear set build that we had back in the first game, both kind of making it a bit more accessible and a bit more simplified than what we had in the first game. One thing that I thought was really cool with this demo was the fact that basically when you finished the main story missions that they had available for you, they unlocked 3 different in-game characters for you to play with, and each of these 3 different in-game characters came with a different specialization. Specializations are sort of like powerful heavy weapons in Destiny that you'll be able to select when you get to in-game that are specified on, different class builds and stuff like that. One is a 50 caliber sniper rifle, one's a crossbow that shoots exploding bolts, and the final one is a grenade launcher. And alongside picking whichever specialist you want to go with, you'll also get access to a special grenade and some different perks and whatnot that are tailored towards your build. I think it's pretty interesting. It serves as kind of an extra super powerful weapon for you to play around with, and it further pushes you towards specializing your character build. If you're somebody who likes to be a marksman, who maybe runs around with marksman rifles and snipers and all of that kind of stuff, you're going to want to run with the 50 cal sniper for all the big bonuses you can get, not only to that weapon's damage, but also to your other sniper rifle's damage. And then there's the demolitions one for the grenade launcher, which of course would prioritize explosive ordnance and stuff like that. It really looks like they're taking what they had with the class builds that we can make in Division 1 and trying to expand upon it with this additional heavy weapon in Division 2. I think it's going to be really interesting to see the kind of things that we'll be able to pull off with that in the future. Overall, I really had a lot of fun with this beta, and maybe my opinion is a little bit biased. I loved the Division 1. I think after the first year, when they really turned things around, culminating in patch 1.8, which really, in my opinion, revolutionized the Division and turned it into the fantastic in-game world space that the game has today, I think I was ready to jump into a game that provides more of that. And from this first look at Division 2, it's definitely got its issues, like the server issues, some of the jank with the movement system. Another thing would be part of the UI. I had a lot of trouble with the UI on PC, having to double click to get into certain menus and stuff like that. I think they could definitely clean that up a little bit before launch. And even some of the abilities. One of my biggest pet peeves from the beta was they changed the way some of the abilities work, like with your turret or with your seeker mine. They don't automatically target enemies anymore. I mean, the normal Gatling gun turret does, but there's this new one that's like a sniper rifle, and you have to manually target things. And it's the same thing for the seeker drones. Back in Division 1, you used to just be able to pop those out. You could direct them where to go, but if you just drop them, they would just target enemies and go after them. And they don't do that in this. And the apparatus you use for targeting enemies can be really, really clunky. A lot of the times I found myself dropping seeker drones, sending them to a target, and then killing that target before the drone ever got there, because it just takes so long and it's so unintuitive. Hopefully they change that when the full game releases in a few weeks. Additionally, I wasn't too fond of the changes to the mod system. Back in the first game, you could craft different weapon mods like extended mags and stuff like that, muzzles and scopes to put on your weapons, and those mods that you would craft would have different abilities, different stat bonuses. In this, you kind of just unlock those as part of your perk tree and then attach them to your weapons. I think that's fine, it's more streamlined, but negative attributes that were on these mods were a little bit excessive for not much gain. It's like plus 20% accuracy, minus 15% critical hit damage, and I do believe they made a statement saying they're gonna tone some of those negative aspects down a little bit. So I am very glad to hear that. But like I said, overall I had a lot of fun with the Division 2 beta. It seems like Massive's really taking the things they learned with the first game and implementing it with the second game right from the start, and that's exactly what I wanted to see moving forward. I cannot lie, there is a lot of stuff that does still need to be fixed with this, the HUD, the movement system, some of the server issues. And so in that facet, if you're somebody who didn't enjoy the first game, maybe give the Division 2 a little bit before you decide to poke in and see whether or not it's going to be something that you enjoyed. Since the Division 2 is definitely looking like a little bit more of the same from the endgame of the first game, if you're not a fan of third-person looter shooters, you're probably not going to enjoy the Division 2 too much. But if you did enjoy where the Division 1 left off, or if you're a fan of RPG looter shooters, the Division 2 is definitely looking pretty good. Hopefully we have ourselves an open beta, an open demo before the full game comes out so that you can test it out on your own before you dive in. I myself had a fantastic time with it. I am definitely picking this up and I am going to be enjoying all of my time on it. Well, hopefully. But those are my thoughts, agents. Be sure to leave me yours down in the comment section below. Did you get a chance to play the Division 2's private demo? What are your thoughts? Do you think it's an improvement over the first game? Be sure to let me know down in the comment section below. But alright, I'm out for now. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, I am the Black Link. You guys stay frosty.